Hi, this is Miss Renzi, and this is lesson 2 of the Rise of the Roman Republic. If you are in N111, N114, or Northeastern, you are completing this lesson for May 28th, Thursday. If you are in N113, this lesson is an extra lesson for you guys that I will be in contact with you about. Okay. By extra, I don't mean you don't have to do it. I mean that it's not assigned to a day because of Labor Day. Okay. For this lesson, we're going to learn a little bit about slavery in ancient Rome. We're going to watch a vocabulary about Spartacus, who was a famous Roman enslaved person, and then I'll instruct and preview on the work. Okay. So slavery in ancient Rome, what are the basics? So as in Greece, regular people in or around Rome could become enslaved if they went into debt. Or regular people could be enslaved if their land was conquered by Roman forces and they were captured as prisoners. Unlike in the Americas, slavery was not based on race. Although, if you were a foreign person who lived in the area around Rome, there was a greater risk that you would be put into slavery because the Romans were conquering your land. So the ethnicities of the enslaved people in Rome were very diverse because those enslaved people came from all over the Roman Empire. Enslaved people were often brought back by soldiers who owned them, and I'm putting owned in air quotes because you really can't own another person. But if you were captured by a particular general or a soldier, that general or soldier might bring you and your family back to Rome with them when they returned to the city after the war, whichever war it was over. Enslaved people in Rome could have high educations. It was kind of like Athens in that way. There were a lot of enslaved people who became lawyers, doctors, accountants. Often enslaved people had special skills, right, that they had practiced in their home countries before they were enslaved and brought to Rome. And the Romans encouraged them to keep those skills. But there were also a lot of enslaved people who were servants. They were farmers, they were housemaids. If they were really unlucky, they were assigned to work in the mines. That was a quick way to meet your demise because the fumes were so poisonous down there and the work was backbreaking. And a few slaves even ended up in the arena as gladiators. You may or may not know this, but being a gladiator was not something people chose to do. It was almost always something that people were enslaved and trained to do as part of their work as an enslaved person. So let's talk about the rights that enslaved people had. Being an enslaved person throughout history has always been awful, unfair, cruel, inhumane. However, in Rome, we find that enslaved people had more rights than enslaved people in other communities. So, for example, enslaved people in Rome could earn money, they could own property, they could buy their own freedom. They, generally speaking, married who they wanted. Um, if they were freed, they could become citizens. So a freed enslaved person in Rome became a citizen and they could vote. That's pretty great, right? There was no penalty for having been an enslaved person in the past, like there were in the other places we've studied. So, for example, in Athens, you could be freed, but you were never a citizen. Okay, there were times when things became more strict or more loose for enslaved people in Rome. It kind of just depended on who was in charge. So, one emperor might be really nice towards enslaved people, and another emperor might be afraid there would be a rebellion and tighten things up. Um, because Rome is the first place that we study where you could actually escape and walk around town and no one would know that you had been an enslaved person, there became this habit of tattooing enslaved people. This photo shows an enslaved person with a tattoo on their forehead. That was very rare. Most enslaved people were tattooed on their hand, and what the tattoo usually said was, I'm a runaway, capture me. This photo of this person who has fugitive tattooed on their forehead is from a TV show, and it's just not particularly accurate. Usually people were tattooed before they escaped. So you didn't get tattooed on your forehead to say, I did escape in the past. It was more something someone would do preventatively on your hand or sometimes on your back. Um, But enslaved people did escape all the time in Rome because it was a really big city, and it wasn't like Mesopotamia or Egypt where everybody knew everyone and you couldn't just be walking around and be unknown. Rome was a place where there were lots of strangers, and it was easy to hide there. Okay, let's keep moving. So we're going to watch a vocabulary today about Spartacus, and Spartacus is not a Spartan. That's the first thing. He's not a Greek. He's not from Sparta. He was a Roman who was named Spartacus. And he escaped his enslaved situation and led a rebellion. He was enslaved as a gladiator because he was really strong and really fast. And this vocabulary sort of tells the story about his escape and his rebellion. And we'll talk just a tiny bit more about Spartacus after the vocabulary because it does leave out like some really big plot points. Okay, so let's see if I can get this to work. It is sometimes tricky for me to get videos to play, but the last time I did it, it worked. So let's see if I can get it to work this time.
Yo, Emilio, will you hit those lights? Turn those lights off. It's dark in here. Check it. Yo, they call me Spartacus. I was a normal guy until the Romans invaded. I watched my mama die. She didn't get a grave. They killed my father too. They made me a slave and told me what to do. Made me a gladiator. They threw me in the ring and I fought some lions and soldiers. I'm fighting everything. They make you kill a man. They make you kill again. I killed a guy, took his helmet off. It was my friend. I said this needs to end. I mean, I'm getting close. I'm like Vesuvius, baby. I mean, I'm set to blow. The Roman Republic got rich off the slaves' backs. So now I think we need some payback. Me and 69 guys stuck into the kitchen, got 69 knives. This is the beginning of the uprising, and we escaped ourselves. Spread the word to other slaves, you can escape as well. And they flocked to me. See, they wanted to see what life's like when you give us free. Like Julius Caesar, I led a whole movement. We had 120,000 humans. You wanna know who Spartacus is? I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. Yeah. Spartacus. Okay. Now the senators started getting scared in Rome because we were plundering land near their summer homes. We were fearless. I was like, send your best generals, send me your Pompeys and Caesars. I'm not a DJ. This hit's not the remix. We started this like Romulus and Remus. Slaves, join us if you've had enough. We moved on like water through an aqueduct. So you can pray to Jupiter, you can pray to Mars. You'll need more than gods, you'll be seeing stars. Now Rome had a problem, I'm Spartacus. And we fight to the death if you harming us. I didn't want this, I wanted peace. I wanted packs, I wanted to be clean like a public bath. I want to walk with my daughter through Rome. In the forum, maybe hear a speech. In the Colosseum, see a show. The Roman legions came, and yes, they are well trained. I'd rather die free than live like a slave. I'll beat them back, I said I'll beat them back. I'm free now and I'll never go back. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. Spartacus.
Okay. So that is the story of the enslaved person Spartacus who led a really huge rebellion against the Romans. The video leaves out the part at the end where Spartacus's rebellion fails and Spartacus is executed. Spartacus is they made a famous movie out of it a long time ago, and then there's a mini series or a series. I'm not sure where it streams, but there's a show about Spartacus. I don't think it's rated PG, so if your parents are okay with it, definitely you could watch it and learn a lot about ancient Roman enslaved people. I've never personally seen it, and I have a feeling it's pretty violent, so please don't just check it out without your parent permission. Okay, so let's go back to those slides and see what else we got to do. So today's work is on Google Forms, like usual, not always, but usual. So let's look at the prompt. Today is just a short creative writing prompt. So there's not reading comprehensions questions today. I'm asking you to write a short diary entry as an enslaved person. So let's just read the assignment together. It says, Diary of an Enslaved Person. After learning about slavery in Rome and the enslaved rebellion of Spartacus, who ultimately lost his life in the fight for freedom, I want you to imagine that you are a Roman enslaved person. You can be a kid or a grown up in a profession like being a lawyer or a doctor, or a lowly worker in the silver mines. You could be a gladiator like Spartacus or anybody else. Write a diary entry of 100 to 150 words about a day in your life. Be as dramatic or everyday as you wish. The only requirement is that the work be your own and reflect a day in the life of an enslaved person in Rome. Okay? So it's a writing prompt of 100, 150 words. Obviously, as always, if you need help, feel free to email me at lrenzi@bostonpublicschools.org or text me at 617-804-1403. Miss Renzi, help me, I don't understand the work. Okay. Thank you very much, and I hope you have a lovely day. It's my Facebook.